Hello folks, welcome to the Edupedia world and I am Abhinay Gupta. Today again we'll continue with the topic, the meeting of the board and its powers. So in the immediate preceding lecture, we have discussed an important element of the meeting of the board, that is the chairperson. Right? And also we discussed about the minutes of the meetings. But that was not related to the meeting of the board independently, that was also related to the meeting of the shareholders, the meeting of the creditors, the meeting of the committee. Right? So what we actually discussed while we were talking about the chairperson of the meeting is that a chairperson is a temporary elected chairperson. So the board elects the chairperson for a fixed duration, right? And he is a chairperson only for the meetings, right? He presides over the meetings and he sees to the proper conduct of the meeting, right? And the provisions for his election or for his appointment is not contained in the statutory provisions. Right? There is no section in the act that defines his appointment, but that is actually guided by the model of table F, that is regulation 70. Right? So basically you follow the provisions of the article, but if nothing is mentioned in the article, you have the model provision for that. But the article would also contain the model provision in a modified form. Right? So, and we also saw the basic point to note that a chairperson would always be only a director. They cannot be a proxy, right? But there is no necessity that he would be a whole-time director. Even a non-executive director would be eligible to be elected as a chairperson, right? And there is no other compulsion for the director to hold the share as well, right? And then the last thing that we saw over there was that the chairperson is given a casting vote, and that power is given to him by the article, right? But the article says that the chairperson of the board has that casting vote. So the chairperson of the board meeting will not be allowed to use his casting vote. Now what is casting vote? Casting vote is the second vote given to the chairperson. It is not a mandate for him to use it, but he may use it in the time of a tie, right? To break the deadlock, right? So that was basically the provisions that we discussed that are that followed the chairperson. The other topic that we covered in the previous lecture was the minutes, right? We have seen that minute is a document, it is a protocol, right? It records all the proceedings of the meetings, the date, signature, the name of the directors attending it, the name of the chairperson, the various resolutions passed, right? How many directors were for it, how many directors opposed it, what was the conclusion. These things are recorded and they are maintained in a separate book, right? And you have a separate minute book for your creditors, separate for your shareholders, separate for your directors, right? And then we have also seen that the minutes have to be signed and recorded within 30 days from the conclusion of the meeting, right? Or within 30 days from when the resolution of the postal ballot is passed. And the matters to be included in the minute are actually at the discretion of the chairman. So if the chairman considers any matter to be defamatory, irrelevant, immaterial or detrimental to the company, he would not include those matters into the minute. Right? And the minute is finally used as an evidence, right? It gives you an evidence value that yeah, these meetings were conducted, these were the resolutions passed, these were the directors who attended it. Right? And there's a basic presumption that the meeting was called and held, the proceedings were duly taking place, the resolutions were duly passed, and the appointment of the director or key managerial person, auditor, secretary, whosoever it is, was duly made, validly made, unless something in contrary is proved. Right? And then we have also seen that for contravention you had a penalty for the company for rupees 25,000 and for the officers for rupees 5,000. And if there is a tampering, right, which is a serious fault, a serious action that is taken, so for that you have a serious penalty that is from 25,000 to 1 lakh and also an imprisonment for 2 years, right? And we've also seen rule 25 that dealt with the meetings. Over there, the important thing that we saw was the signature, right? We saw that the meeting of the first of all, we saw that all the pages have to be initialed and the final page has to be signed and dated. And who would sign the minutes? The minutes of the board meeting would be signed by the chairman of the meeting or the chairman of the next meeting. The minutes of the general meeting would be signed by the chairman of the same meeting within 30 days, or if he cannot, right, because of his inability or death or something, then a director who is authorized by the board. and the resolution passed by postal ballot would be signed by the chairperson, chairman of the board, and if due to some inability or death that chairman is not able to sign, then the minute would be signed by the director who is duly authorized by the board for that purpose. And we saw that it has to be preserved permanently and kept at registered office with the company secretary. So that was a quick revision of both the topics, right? And now we would discuss a few questions on the minutes of the meeting that have appeared in your previous examinations, right? So you have had questions in CA Final November 2000. You had 2 questions over there. You had question also in some other examination, like you had one in June 1999. Right? So we'll discuss what were the questions that appeared in that examination. So the basic crux of the question in November 2000 examination was whether the maintenance of minute in a loose leaf form is permissible. Right? So if such question appear in your book, you will first have to write down the provisions of section 118 that you'll have to maintain the minute books and stuff. And then as per rule 25, you'll mention that it shall be entered in the books and each page should have been initialed and signed, right? So over there you will say that as per the rule 25 and as per regulation 118, regulation of section 118, you will have to maintain a book, right? And hence the maintenance of loose leaflet is not permitted, right? And the second question that you had, the crux for that question was that whether signing of the minute book, like actually who would sign the minute book if the chairman dies? Right. So you write that it would be signed and initialed by the chairman, and if in case there is an inability or by death the chairman is not able to sign, then the signing authority would be passed on to the director who is authorized by the board, right? We have discussed that already, right? So that is the basic 2 questions that were asked. And then there was one more topic that was not covered while I was teaching you the minutes, but I kept it reserved so that we would discuss it while we were discussing this question. So you had a question whereby you were asked about the inspection of the minute of the board meeting by the members, that is the shareholders. So the question says that the member wants to inspect, so please advise. So for this you would actually refer to the next section, section 119, right, which infers upon the shareholder the right to the copies of the minutes of the shareholders meeting, the general meeting. But however, that does not give you the right to inspect the minutes of the board meeting, right? And there is no other provision contained in the act which would actually permit or specifically prohibit the member from inspecting the minutes of the board, but that would be actually passed on to the article. So if article allows the shareholder to inspect the minutes of the board, then the shareholder can inspect the minutes of the board. That is the only case where they can inspect the minutes of the board, otherwise they can not, right? So that was all about the revision of the previous lecture and also the questions that we promised we would be discussing in the continuing lecture. We have completed that. Now we move on to the next section, that is section 117, the audit committee. So basically, what is an audit committee? So an audit committee is actually a committee that is formed by the board, and the members for the audit committee would be the members of the board itself. They would elect some of the members on the board to open up an audit committee separately, and they would be the members of those committee, and then they would transact or look upon the entire procedure and the proceeding of the audit, right? So that is a specific division created for that specific task. So we would now see with the provision what are the various functions of the audit committee, what are the requirements for constitution of audit committee, and the other matters, right? So first we need to see which are the companies that are required to form an audit committee. So the audit committee is constituted by the board of directors of the listed companies and the prescribed companies. So when we talk about the listed companies, it covers all the listed companies. And when we talk about the prescribed companies, we are referring to those companies that are eligible to that will have to hold the independent directors as well. So the provisions that were related to the independent director as per section 149, right, the requirements that which is when fulfilled you will have to appoint the independent director. We have the same provisions that define your eligibility to constitute an audit committee, right? So what are the limits again? If we check, then it actually covers all the public company that has a turnover of more than 100 crores, right, or who have a paid up share capital of greater than 10 crores, or otherwise who have in aggregate the outstanding loan or borrowing or debenture or deposit which exceeds rupees 50 crore or more, right? So these are the companies which are prescribed and they will have to form an audit committee. And otherwise, for listed companies, all listed companies will have to have an audit committee. And those public companies which fall within this bandwidth, that fall beyond this bandwidth actually, who are actually supposed to create an audit committee, if they did not create an audit committee as per the provisions of your previous act of 1956, section 292A, then and still if you fall within that criteria of eligibility to create an audit committee, you will have to fulfill the need within a period of 1 year. And that would be 1 year from either the commencement of these rules, the rules of 2014, or 1 year from the appointment of the independent directors, right? So whichever is earlier. Now, what would be the composition of your audit committee? So audit committee would be minimum have at least 3 directors from your board, right? And the majority directors, that is more than 50% of your directors, should have been an independent director, right? And also the majority of your directors, including the chairperson of the audit committee, should have the ability to read and understand the financial statements, because when you are dealing with the auditors are hired by your company. They come to your company basically to audit the financial statements. And if you are a part of the audit company and you're dealing with the auditors and you don't know how to actually read and understand the financial statement, you would be of no use in the audit committee. So that is a requirement also given by the act, given by the section, that the audit committee, majority of the directors in the audit committee, including the chairman, should have the ability to read and understand the financial statements, right? So these are the requirements of the directors. So if there are audit committees that existed before the commencement of this act, then they will have to be reconstituted as per the provisions of this act, as per the provisions of section 177, within a period of 1 year from the commencement of the act, right? And we will also understand that the auditors or the key managerial person will have the authority to be heard at the audit committee's meeting, but they will obviously not have the authority to vote over there, right? So now we understand what an audit committee is, where is it created, and what is the constituent of the audit committee. Now we move on to actually analyze what are the functions of the audit committee, right? What does the audit committee do? Why is it created? So when we understand the function, the basic thing is we need to understand that all their functions would relate to the audit of the company. They would actually recommend the board, recommend the company related with topics related to the appointment, remuneration, the terms of auditors, right? So who is the auditor that has to be appointed? If they give 2-3 nominations and they say, okay, you are good to go with any one of them, right? What are the remuneration that has to be given will also be decided by the audit committee, and also their term, for how long will that auditor serve the company, right? They would also review and monitor the independence, the performance, and the effectiveness of the audit process. So while the auditors are performing their task, while the audit is ongoing, they would review whether the independence of the auditors, right, the procedure, what are they performing, the process, and the effectiveness, how effective are the process of the audit, right? And then, as we know, because since we had a basic requirement that they should have the ability to read and understand the financial statement, they would examine the financial statement and the auditor's report. Further, they would also approve the transactions with the related party, the section 188 transactions. So because they can scrutinize the event and they are related to the auditors, they are linked to the auditors of the company, they can very well scrutinize the transactions of the related party. So they have the authority to approve the transactions with the related parties, right? They would also scrutinize the intercorporate loans and investment. If the company is making some intercorporate loan and investment, what are the financial impact and whether or not they should do it, right? That will be analyzed by the committee, and that will also be scrutinized by the committee, right? They would also indulge into the valuation of the undertaking or the asset of the company wherever it is necessary, right? And they would also evaluate the internal financial control that the company has established, and also the risk management system that is operating into the company. And if there is any fund that is raised through public offer and related matters, then they would monitor the end use of the fund, right? So that is basically the function for which the audit committee is created. So I hope you're clear with it. Now next we move on to the powers of the audit committee. So when we talk about the powers of the audit committee, we understand that they have the power to call and comment. Actually, they have the power to call the comments of the auditors on the internal control, on the scope, on the observations, on the review of financial statements, right? So they discuss these matters with the auditors of the company directly, right? And when they get their comments, they get their review, they analyze the situation. So they have that power. They can ask the auditors to comment on these things, right? And they also have the authority. They also have the power to discuss some issues with the internal or the statutory auditor of the company and as well as the management of the company. They can take forward these issues and they can discuss it with the management. Further, the members of the audit committee, or actually the entire audit committee, would have full access to the records and the professional advices that have been taken. Right? They have the access. They can go and review the records that have been prepared and also what are the professional advice taken, what were the situations, and they can analyze it to convert it into some useful information. Next, if we talk about the role of auditors, we have already seen that the auditors, basically they would audit the company, but they would also have the right to be heard at the audit committee meeting, right? But nowhere the provision says that they would have the right to vote. So they would not have the right to vote, but they would have the right to definitely attend the audit committee meetings. So next, last we see the board report. When we talk about the board report, we talk about the disclosures in the board report, right? So the board reports shall disclose the composition of the audit committee. Who are the who is the chairman, who are the directors, how many of them are independent, who are those independent directors. This composition would be disclosed in the board report. And when the board does not accept any recommendation of the audit committee, the same shall be disclosed in the board's report along with the reason why they do not accept the recommendation of the audit committee for any matter, right? For any matter on which they had asked for the comments of the audit committee, right? So now I hope the constitution, the process, the function, the power and the entire working of the audit committee is clear with you, right? But now there is one more thing that we need to discuss, that is about the vigil mechanism, right? So now what do you understand by the vigil mechanism? It is basically a mechanism that enables the employee and the people, right? The people of the firm, the people of the company, to actually inform the management about the genuine concerns that they are facing, right? So a company would basically establish a vigil mechanism for the directors and the employees to report genuine concerns that they have, right? And they shall provide a proper safeguard against the victimization of that director or employee who is actually raising that concern, right? And they would make provision for the direct access to the chairman of the audit committee. So that is what a vigil mechanism is all about. So what are the companies that need to establish a vigil mechanism? First of all, yeah, it is all the listed companies, right? And secondly, such other classes of companies as may be prescribed. So over here we do not refer to the old prescriptions that we have seen, the limit of 10 crores, 100 crores and so on. For this you refer to the Rule 7 of the company's meetings of the board and its power rule 2014. Right? According to that, the prescribed companies are the companies which have accepted deposit from the public and the companies which have borrowed money from the bank and the financial institution which is in excess of rupees 50 crores. So if you cross this bandwidth, you will be actually liable to create a vigil mechanism into your company, right? So this provision will be applicable on your company. So when you establish a vigil mechanism, you give the directors and employee an opportunity to report genuine concern, and that would be in the manner as may be prescribed, right? And you also know that you should provide an adequate, the vigil mechanism will actually provide an adequate safeguard against the victimization of those persons who are raising that genuine concern. The people who use such a mechanism to reach out to the chairperson of the audit committee in appropriate or exceptional cases. So now if you understand how do we create, right, how do we establish a vigil mechanism, then again the provisions for the same, the procedural part, are included in the Rule 7 of the company's meeting of the board and its power rule 2014, right? And what happens in that? So in case this company right, who is supposed to create a vigil mechanism as per the Rule 7 if they have accepted deposit from public or borrowed money beyond 50 crores. And then if they have also crossed the bandwidth of preparing an audit committee, right, that we have already seen. If they also qualify that and they have an audit committee, then that audit committee would oversee the vigil mechanism, right? And if there is any member of audit committee who is interested or who has a conflict of interest with the issue, then he would rescue himself and the other members of the committee would take over the vigil mechanism, right? And in the other companies which are not actually required to create that audit committee, right, then there is no audit committee to oversee the vigil mechanism, then who would do that? So for that purpose, the board of directors would appoint or authorize a director. They would nominate a director to play the role of the audit committee, right? So that director would be the director who would look over the entire vigil mechanism, and since he is the only director, he would be the only person, the point of contact, whom the other directors or the employees would approach. But again, you will also have to safeguard the vigil mechanism. There should not be an instance that a director or employee, he approaches the chairman of the audit committee or the director who is authorized to take the position, right, to act as the audit committee for any unnecessary and not so important matters, right? So if there is any director who approaches the chairman via the vigil mechanism with frivolous complaints, right, then the director or the chairman, if there is an audit committee, would take suitable action to against the concerned director or the employee, right, including reprimanding him. So they have the power to even reprimand the director who comes forward with some unnecessary concern, because the vigil mechanism is actually established for some genuine concern, right? It is kind of a whistleblowing. You could come and you could say if there is any problem in the company, if you're facing something, you can come and discuss, right? And your safeguard is under the control of the audit committee, and they will have the responsibility to safeguard you from the victimization, right? And whatever are the details of the vigil mechanism, that shall be disclosed by the company on its website if they have any, and also in the board's report that they prepare, right? So that is all about vigil mechanisms. So I guess you are clear with the provisions of section 177 about the audit committee. What is an audit committee? When is it prepared? Right? And what are the various functions of the audit committee, the powers and the roles, and then also the very important topic, that is the vigil mechanism. You know the entire working of the vigil mechanism and why is it created and how is it created, right? So I think that will be the end of the lecture today. We'll continue with the other provisions of the chapter, that is from section 178 in the upcoming lectures. So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta